He rang the bell like he owned the place. 3 quick, impatient chimes, as if I ought to have been standing at the door already, waiting for him. I wasn't. I was in the kitchen, steeping my tea. At 79, I don't rush for anyone, especially not someone who hasn't bothered to visit in almost a year. But when I opened the door and saw Gavin standing there with that tight smile and box of pastries from some city bakery, I didn't say what I was thinking. I said, "Well, would you look at that? The prodigal grandson returns." He laughed like it was a joke, and maybe it was. I let him in, stepping aside slowly, steadying myself on the edge of the doorframe. He glanced at the hallway like it was unfamiliar, though he'd grown up in this house. Summer afternoons playing with the garden hose, school nights spent curled on that same old couch, watching cartoons. "You look good, Grandma," he said, setting the box on the kitchen table. "I was in the area and thought I'd check on you." People like to say that when they feel guilty. I was too tired to pick at it. I nodded toward the kettle. "You're just in time for tea. I only ever make 2 cups, even when I'm alone. One for me, one for whoever might stop by." He smiled, but his eyes were already scanning the kitchen, then the living room, looking, perhaps, for signs of weakness. Decline. A cane I didn't have, a bottle of pills I didn't keep out. He found none. I keep my house the way I keep myself, upright and quietly dignified. We sat in the kitchen, the box of pastries untouched. He was talking about the weather at first, then about his work in real estate. "You wouldn't believe what these old properties are going for now," he said. "People want charm, original woodwork, vintage fixtures. Nostalgia's the new luxury." "Is that so?" I said, sipping my tea. I looked him square in the face, and I wondered if he remembered who sanded and varnished every inch of wood in this house. His grandfather, rest his soul, spent whole weekends getting the trim just right. "It must be worth a fortune now, this place," he added lightly. "You ever had it appraised?" "No need," I said. "It's not for sale." He laughed again, a little too loudly. "I didn't mean that. I was just curious. It's got history, you know." Yes, it had history. Most of it standing right between the cracks in the floorboards and the corners of the old photographs still hanging in the hallway. Me holding Gavin when he was 3, his mother still smiling in that red sundress she stopped wearing after the divorce. All of them still here, though no one ever visits anymore. He shifted in his seat. "Say, do you still keep your important documents in that desk in the den?" I looked up from my cup. "Why would you ask a thing like that?" He shrugged. "Just remembered from when I was a kid. Thought maybe you'd moved them somewhere safer. You know, fireproof box or something." "No fire here," I said simply, "and nothing needs moving." We didn't talk about it again. He stayed another 20 minutes, asked if he could use the restroom, wandered the hall a bit. I heard the door to the study click open and shut. Nothing alarming, not at the time. When he returned, he was smiling again. "Thanks for the tea, Grandma. You take care of yourself, okay?" I walked him to the door. He hugged me tighter than usual. I stood on the porch, watching his car pull away. It was late afternoon. The light was turning gold, the kind my husband used to say, made this house look like it was glowing from within. I didn't go back to the kitchen right away. I just stood there. Something was off. I could feel it in my joints, the way the wind shifted. A silence in the house that wasn't there before. An hour later, I went to the study. The drawer where I kept the property deed was ajar. Not wide open, not ransacked, just a hair off, like someone had opened it and tried to make it look untouched. I reached in slowly, Every inch of me chilled. The envelope, thick, yellowed, with the original document inside, was gone. I stood there for a long time, hand still in the drawer, staring at the empty space where it used to be. Not crying, not panicking, just very, very quiet, like a storm about to break. I didn't sleep that night, not because of fear. At my age, you stop fearing things like loss or betrayal. They become familiar, like the arthritis in your knuckles. Always there, always aching, but you learn to live with it. No, what kept me up was the silence of it. The insult of how easily he thought he could take something and walk away. I sat in the armchair by the window, wrapped in the shawl my sister crocheted me 20 years ago. The moonlight spilled across the room in silver bars, brushing the photographs on the mantelpiece. My eyes kept going back to the space between James's old pipe stand and the clock. That's where the deed had sat when we first bought this house. He'd kept it in a tin box before I moved it to the desk drawer years later. "Never let anyone near our papers, Aggie," he used to say. "They'll smile at your face and reach for your pockets with the same hand." James had a way of seeing things before they happened. I just never thought he'd be right about our own blood. By morning, I had made a list. First, verify. Second, prepare. Third, respond. I started with the desk. Every envelope, every folder, one by one. The will, still there. The bank statements, untouched. The note from the county office about a tax reassessment, just as I remembered. But the deed? Gone. Just the plastic sleeve it used to rest in, left behind like a skin. I stood slowly, knees creaking, and made my way to the dining room cabinet. My address book, still stuffed with yellowing pages, sat waiting. I flipped through it until I found the number I hadn't dialed in years. "Winslow, Gray and Beck," said the voice on the line. A young woman, bored-sounding. "Is Timothy Beck still with your firm?" I asked, wrapping the phone cord around my finger. "Yes, ma'am." "May I ask who's calling?" "Agnes Reynolds. Tell him it's about a deed. He'll remember." There was a pause, then hold music. Then, finally, a familiar voice, older now, raspier. "Aggie?" he said. "Well, I'll be damned." I smiled despite myself. "You're not. Not yet, anyway. Can you fit me in today?" "For you, always. Come in at 2. And Aggie, bring whatever you have. We'll start from there." I hung up and wrote the time down on the back of a shopping receipt. Then I got dressed, slowly and deliberately. Navy skirt, white blouse, a brooch I hadn't worn in years. I looked in the mirror and didn't try to hide the lines or gray. Let them see me as I am. Let them underestimate me again. The law office was just as I remembered. Plain, efficient, with a smell of stale paper and coffee. Tim Beck stood when I entered. Still tall, though more bent. Still with the same wise eyes under those shaggy brows. "You look good, Aggie," he said, taking my coat. "I look like a woman who's missing a deed," I replied. He nodded solemnly and gestured toward the chair across his desk. I sat, opened my handbag, handed him the plastic sleeve. "Do you have any reason to believe someone took the document intentionally?" he asked. "I have every reason," I said. "My grandson, Gavin. He visited yesterday, after a year of silence, asked questions about the house, then used my bathroom and left with a hug. This morning, the deed is gone." Tim pursed his lips. "Has he tried to file anything? Have you gotten any letters? Notifications?" "Nothing yet, but I want to know if he can do anything with it." He sat back. "Not easily. He'd need either your signature or a forged one. and the county clerk's office won't process title changes without ID checks these days. Still, he could try. I looked at him. Could he sign my name? Tim met my gaze. It's happened. People do worse for less. But if he did file anything, I can find out within the day. Do it, I said. And if you find anything, I want it documented. He nodded. Aggie, you sure you want to go this road? It'll get ugly. I'm 79, Tim. Everything gets ugly eventually. I just want it on my terms. He smiled, gently. That's the woman I remember. We talked another 20 minutes. He took copies of my ID, drafted a request to place a temporary hold on any property changes under my name, said he'd send a clerk to the recorder's office by afternoon. When I left, the sky was cloudy, cold, even for fall. I tightened my coat around me and walked to the corner bakery. Bought a loaf of sourdough, though I wasn't hungry. Old habits die slow. Back home, the house felt different, like it knew something had shifted. A new kind of silence. Not grief, not even betrayal. Readiness. I placed the bread on the counter, went back to the study. This time, I locked the drawer. Not that there was anything left to steal, but it was the gesture, the line, and I'd drawn it. I've always believed people reveal themselves not in what they say, but in how they change the subject. That afternoon, I called Gavin, not to accuse, not yet. I just wanted to hear how he'd lie to me. He picked up on the third ring, breathless. Hey, Grandma, everything okay? You tell me, I said, steady. A pause. Then, laughter. You sound serious. I am. I was going through the study earlier, and I noticed something was missing. Oh? Another pause, this one tighter. What kind of something? You tell me, I repeated. He went quiet for 3 seconds. 4. I could hear the little clicks of a keyboard in the background. Then he coughed, as if that might buy him time. Look, Grandma. I didn't see anything strange while I was there. Maybe you misplaced it? I've had that envelope in the same drawer for 18 years, Gavin. It didn't grow legs and walk out. A nervous chuckle. You really think I don't think. I know. I could hear him swallow. I'm giving you one chance to bring it back, I said. No questions, no drama. Just return what you took, and we'll pretend this never happened. Silence. Then, Grandma, I don't know what you think you're doing, but accusing me of theft is, frankly, out of line. There it was. The shift. The polished voice of a man who thought charm was a shield and arrogance a sword. I see, I said. I mean, come on. You're getting older. Maybe your memory's not what it used to be. Maybe... I hung up. Let him talk to a deadline. Better than listening to him insult me under the guise of concern. The next hour I spent on the phone again, this time with the county recorder's office. A young woman named Bridget told me no recent transactions had been filed under my name. I asked her to flag any attempts. She said she could notify me if someone tried to initiate a change in ownership. I gave her my number, thanked her kindly, and hung up. I wasn't scared. I was furious. But fury, I've learned, is useless unless it turns into motion. By 4 o'clock, I had my coat on again and was walking 2 blocks to the library, not for books, for the public computers. I don't keep the internet at home. Don't need it. But today, I did. I looked up everything. How long it takes to process a forged deed. What steps a person could take to reverse it. What kind of charges applied. What kind of sentence. I printed it all. 5 pages. Folded them neatly into a manila envelope. Wrote, "For Gavin," across the front in thick black ink. Then I made a second envelope for myself, with copies, just in case. Back home, I stood on the porch for a moment before going in. My house looked smaller somehow, not from age. From the realization that someone I once held as a baby had tried to steal it out from under me. Inside, I placed the envelope for Gavin on the hallway table, beside the lamp. I didn't know when he'd come by again, but I knew he would. People like him always come back, not for apologies, for access. I made tea, sat down, and waited. Evening came, then dark. No phone call, no knock. Instead, a message. Short. Cold. Grandma, I think it's best if we talk through a lawyer. I don't want any more confusion. Gee. I stared at the screen, then smiled. He thought I'd get scared. He thought lawyer would make me tremble. He didn't know I'd already seen one. I turned off the phone and turned on the radio. Found a station playing old jazz. The kind James and I used to dance to, slow and close, when the kitchen tiles were still shiny and my back didn't ache by evening. Let him bring lawyers. Let him bring suits and smirks and paperwork. I had something stronger, the truth, and a name on that deed that wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, the knock came not from Gavin, but from a woman. Tall, sharp-featured, early 40s, slacks too expensive for our neighborhood, a clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon. Mrs. Reynolds? She asked, not quite smiling. That depends, I said, on who's asking. She extended a card, white, embossed. Vanessa Trent, property consultant, Trent & Knowles Real Estate. I represent a client who recently initiated a property transfer involving this address. I'm here to confirm residency and survey the grounds. She said it like it was a routine matter, like I was the unexpected guest in my own doorway. And which client would that be? She hesitated, then offered the smile, the kind that's tight in the eyes. I'm not at liberty to share details, but the documents were filed yesterday afternoon. There's to be a preliminary showing next week. Of my house? She gave a short nod. Yes, ma'am. I stepped back just enough to close the door halfway between us. Let me tell you something, Ms. Trent. I've lived in this house for 40 years. I've paid every tax, shoveled every snowstorm, buried a husband and raised a family here. There will be no showing, no survey. No transfer. She blinked. Her hand twitched on the clipboard. I'm afraid that's not how it works, she said, voice clipped. If the paperwork's been properly filed, it wasn't. And you'll be wise to remember that possession is 9/10 of the law. So unless you've got a warrant or a badge or a signed invitation, you'll leave now. She straightened. You'll be hearing from our office. I smiled, not sweetly. You already have. Then I shut the door. It took a moment before I moved. Not from fear, but from the weight of what I'd just learned. He'd done it. He hadn't just stolen the deed. He'd filed it. Sometime between my visit to Tim and the phone call to the recorder's office, he'd found another way. A forged signature, maybe, or a fast-tracked submission with some backdoor favor. Didn't matter. It was done, but not finished. I walked to the kitchen. My hands were steady as I picked up the phone. Tim answered on the second ring. Beck? He said. Aggie? She came. A real estate woman. Said my house is scheduled for a showing next week. Jesus. He cursed under his breath. He filed it? Looks like it. I could hear papers rustling, a keyboard clicking. Then, okay. The good news is, we caught it early. The bad news, he got it into the system before we flagged it. Now what? Now we get louder, he said. We'll file a fraud claim with the county. I'll draw up a formal cease and desist for the agency. And Aggie, Do you still have the signature card from your bank? Of course. Bring it. If the signature on the deed doesn't match that, we've got him. I thanked him and hung up. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I took out my old typewriter from the hall closet. Still dusty, still solid. James had kept it when the office upgraded to computers, and I'd used it to type every grocery list, holiday note, and family letter since. Now I used it for something else, to type a letter. To Gavin. No anger, no insults. Just truth. You have made a choice that cannot be undone with silence. You have taken what was not yours, and I see you now as you are. I will not beg, and I will not forget. You had the chance to be part of this family with honesty. You chose something else. AR. I folded it neatly, placed it in the same envelope I'd marked for Gavin, slid in the printed pages about real estate fraud, penalties, and prison time. Then I sealed it shut and placed it back on the table. Let him open that if he dares to come back. Outside, clouds gathered. The air was heavy with something that wasn't quite rain, but it was coming, and so was I. By noon the next day, my lawyer had already filed the fraud complaint. Tim called to confirm. His voice was clipped, focused. He used an old notary stamp, he said. We traced it. Belonged to a woman who passed last year. Someone's still using her seal. Was it Gavin? I asked. Hard to prove yet. But the signature on the deed doesn't match your bank file, not even close. We've got grounds for full reversal. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat for a while in the living room, the blinds half drawn, watching the sidewalk. Every car that slowed made my pulse shift. I wasn't afraid, but I was waiting for the next move. At 1:27 p.m., it came. A knock. Slower this time, almost apologetic. I opened the door to find Gavin standing there. His usual polish was gone. His shirt was wrinkled, his face pale, his eyes shadowed. Grandma, he said, too softly. I let the silence answer him. Can I come in? Still silence. He looked down at the porch floor, then back up. Okay, I get it. I deserve that. I didn't mean for it to get like this. No? I asked finally. What exactly did you mean for it to get like? He shifted his weight. I was trying to secure something for the future. For my family. You don't have a family, Gavin. He flinched. You don't have a wife. You don't have children. All you have is a trail of unpaid loans, an inflated resume, and a habit of assuming people owe you something. And I paused, letting the next part land. Owe you nothing. His mouth opened, then closed. I'm not here to fight, he said. I thought maybe if I could prove I could handle the responsibility, maybe you'd leave the place to me anyway. You thought stealing it would be persuasive? I didn't steal it. You forged a deed, Gavin. You used a dead woman's notary stamp. You listed my home for sale without my knowledge. You lied. He looked genuinely stunned that I knew, that I said it so plainly. I can fix this, he said quickly. I'll call them. I'll cancel everything. I'll undo it. You don't have that kind of power anymore. He frowned. What does that mean? It means the county has flagged the title. It means the fraud complaint is in process. It means you'll be hearing from the sheriff's department within the week. His voice sharpened. You called the police? No, I filed the truth. What happens next is up to them. Gavin's hands curled into fists at his sides. You'd really do that to your own grandson. Now I stepped forward, just enough that he had to look me in the eye. No, Gavin. You did this to yourself. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, seeing nothing left to mine from the visit, turned to go. At the edge of the steps, I called after him. "There's a letter for you." He stopped. "On the table. You can take it. Or not. But don't come back here expecting anything else." He hesitated, then came back up, picked up the envelope, and walked away without a word. I didn't watch him leave. I went to the kitchen, took down my teacup, warmed the kettle. There's something about a steady routine that helps when everything else trembles. But I wasn't trembling anymore. Later that afternoon, a police officer, young, freckled, uncertain, came to the door. "Mrs. Reynolds?" "Yes. We received a notice from the recorder's office. Fraud claim regarding your property. I'm assigned to start the interview process. May I come in?" This time, I opened the door all the way. We sat in the living room. I offered him tea. He declined. I told him everything, quietly, clearly, not dramatizing, not minimizing, just the facts, just what was mine and what was taken. When I handed him the forged deed, the envelope, the letter I'd typed, he looked at me differently, like maybe he came expecting confusion, maybe even a frail woman unsure of her details. Instead, he found a witness with a sharp mind and sharper boundaries. "Do you feel safe at home, ma'am?" he asked, carefully. I smiled. I've never felt safer. The next few days passed quietly, almost too quietly. The police hadn't come back yet. Tim called to say the case was moving up the chain, that the fraud division would likely request a formal statement soon. Meanwhile, Gavin had gone silent. No calls, no texts, not even the passive-aggressive kind. But silence, as I've learned, is never neutral. It means retreat, or regrouping. I spent my time the way I always have. Early mornings, porch sweeping, reading the paper. I kept the TV off. I didn't want background noise. I wanted to hear every footstep on the porch, every car slowing near the curb. On the third morning, it was my neighbor, Nina, who rang the bell. She's in her 60s, lives 2 houses down. We've exchanged pies and Christmas cards for years, nothing more. Today, she brought no pie. "Agnes," she said, stepping in without waiting. "I just saw your grandson at the corner store." I raised an eyebrow. Was he buying morals or selling stories? She ignored the sarcasm. "He was talking to the clerk, loudly, saying how you'd lost your mind, that you were confused, paranoid. Said you'd filed a police report against your own family because you mixed up some papers." I said nothing. "Agnes," she said, lowering her voice. "He's laying the groundwork. That's what people like him do. If he can't win the legal way, he'll try the social way, make you seem unstable, senile, God help us, dangerous." "I appreciate the warning," I said, "but people who know me know better." Nina gave a skeptical look. "You're assuming people want the truth. They usually want the easier story." I sighed. She wasn't wrong. By noon, I was on the phone again, this time with Dr. Ellsworth, my physician for the last 17 years, a good man, careful, kind. "Doc," I said, "I need a letter." "A letter?" "Something formal, medical. I need you to state, clearly and professionally, that I am of sound mind and judgment." There was a pause. "Is this about Gavin?" "Yes." "I've been expecting this call," he said. "I saw his name on my office's incoming request log yesterday." I straightened in my chair. "He contacted you?" "Not directly, but someone from a law office he's used before reached out. Asked if I had any concerns about your cognitive function. I told them I'd need to speak to you first." "Thank you," I said. "I'll write the letter," he promised. I'll send a copy to your lawyer, too. That afternoon, Tim called again. He's trying to preempt you, Aggie. He's laying the groundwork for a claim of diminished capacity. I know. Good news is, we have a long paper trail, clean finances, consistent handwriting, stable medical records. But we'll need more. I want you to document everything from now on. Any interaction, any letter, any visit. I already have, he chuckled. Of course you do. After we hung up, I pulled out the old notebook James used to keep car repairs in. I'd repurposed it after he passed, for groceries, bills, odds and ends. Now, it would serve again. On the first page, in large block letters, I wrote, "Chronicle of a theft that failed." Underneath, the date Gavin came. The questions he asked, the drawer I found open, the real estate woman's visit, the forged documents, the officer's name, the doctor's letter, every single detail, fact by fact, as precise as a ledger. This was not a journal. It was evidence. That night, I lay in bed without turning the light off. My hand rested on the notebook. I didn't sleep much, but I wasn't tired. There's a kind of energy that comes when you've been underestimated. Not because it's flattering, but because it clarifies everything. Let them whisper. Let him posture. Let the world wonder which story to believe. I'd already written mine, and I had the pen. The letter from Dr. Ellsworth arrived the next morning, crisp and clear, signed in blue ink. In my professional opinion, Mrs. Agnes Reynolds demonstrates full cognitive function, independent decision-making, and memory capacity consistent with a healthy adult of her age. There are no signs of cognitive impairment, dementia, or confusion in any of my evaluations over the past 5 years. I made 3 copies, one for Tim, one for the county file, and one folded neatly and placed in the same envelope as the deed fraud notice to keep in the drawer Gavin once violated. He may have opened it once, but the next time it opened, it would be on my terms. At 10:30 sharp, I received a call from the county fraud investigator. Her name was Carolyn Spencer, a firm voice with clipped consonants and no time for sentiment. We've reviewed the claim and supporting documents. The forged deed matches none of the signature samples you provided. We've issued a temporary freeze on any transactions involving your property. You're protected for now. Good, I said. What happens to him? That depends. If the DA chooses to pursue charges, there could be criminal penalties. Minimum, fines and a permanent mark on record. Maximum, a prison sentence. I thought for a moment. How likely is that? Depends on the pressure, she said. Cases like these don't move unless someone pushes. I'll push. Carolyn paused just a beat. We don't get many claimants your age willing to press. Most want it quietly undone. I've lived long enough to know that silence never saved anyone. Well, she said, with something that almost sounded like admiration, you may want to prepare yourself. He's likely to escalate. If he thinks he's cornered, he'll go personal, emotional, financial. He may try to come back. He already tried, I said. He just didn't like what he found. That afternoon, I took out a small box from the closet. Inside were the last of James's personal papers, his Army discharge certificate, old insurance policies, even his pocket knife. And at the bottom, the letter he wrote me on our 40th anniversary, just 6 months before he passed. The ink had faded in places, but the words still burned. If you ever feel alone, remember, you are not a woman who bends easy. You've held this family together, and if they ever forget it, remind them, not with words, with what you refuse to give. I read that letter twice. Then I slipped it into the back pocket of the notebook I now carried from room to room. That evening, just as the sun dipped below the neighbor's elm tree, a car pulled into my driveway. Not Gavin's. A Lexus. White. New. The woman from the real estate office stepped out again. Vanessa Trent. This time, no clipboard. Just a manila envelope and a tight smile. I didn't invite her in. I was asked to deliver this personally, she said, offering the envelope. I didn't take it. From whom? Your grandson, she said, no longer trying to mask her discomfort. He's trying to resolve things amicably. I stared at her. She sighed, lowered her voice. Look, Mrs. Reynolds, off the record, I see this kind of thing more often than you'd believe. Family trying to move assets before it's too late. They think they're protecting the legacy. Taking isn't protection, I said. It's theft. Dressed up in justification. She looked at me a long moment, then set the envelope on the porch railing and stepped back. Some people soften when they see consequences, she said. Others double down. Just be careful. She walked to her car. I watched her drive off before I picked up the envelope. Inside was a typed letter from Gavin. Half apology, half excuse. The kind that opens with, I never meant for this to happen, and ends with, let's not make this harder than it has to be. Enclosed was also a proposal. He wanted me to transfer ownership formally, with a clause that let me live here until death or voluntary departure. I laughed out loud. He thought he could bury a crime inside a favor. I didn't respond. I added the envelope to the file. Everything in its place. Nothing hidden. Let them all see how polite theft looks in writing, and let them learn how one woman, 79 years old, builds a wall out of paper and principle, and never once steps back. It rained the next day. Not the soft kind that whispers against the roof, but the hard, steady sort that makes every gutter sing. The kind James used to say was good for clarity. Rain shakes out what's stuck, he'd tell me. Makes you see what's loose, what leaks. A good day for loose things to come undone. The phone rang just after lunch. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before picking up. Agnes Reynolds? Yes. This is Officer Dane Hensley, Wilmington County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling to inform you that we've officially opened a criminal investigation into Mr. Gavin Thomas Reynolds under Penal Code 115, filing a false instrument. I said nothing, just listened. His statement is being scheduled for next week. We've served a subpoena for the notary records and digital logs from the submission. You will be contacted shortly for a full deposition. Understood, I said. Officer Hensley hesitated. If you'd prefer, we can assign a victim's advocate to assist with the process. Many of our older residents— I don't need an advocate, I interrupted. I need enforcement. A pause. Then, you'll have it. I thanked him and hung up. By late afternoon, the rain had eased into a fine mist. I pulled on James's old windbreaker and stepped out to walk the edge of the yard. The maple trees were just beginning to turn. The soil under my feet was soft, but not muddy. A good firmness beneath the shift. Everything looks different when you know what almost slipped away. I hadn't stood at the edge of my backlot in years. The land sloped gently behind the house toward the garden James once tended. It had gone wild after he passed, just like I had, in ways I didn't notice until now. I crouched, slowly, knees stiff but not useless, and pulled a stubborn weed from the center of the old tomato bed. The roots gave with a long, slow tear. Satisfying. Back inside, the mail was waiting. 2 bills, 1 flyer, and an envelope with a law office return address. Not Tim's. I opened it slowly, blade slicing the seal. Inside, a formal letter from Gavin's attorney. The tone was bland, overly polite. Words like unfortunate misunderstanding, generational miscommunication, and family cohesion. But the message was clear. If I didn't drop the complaint, Gavin would pursue legal guardianship over my affairs. They were trying to play the mental card again. It was bold. I'll give them that. But not smart. I opened my notebook. Logged the date, time, sender, threat, and language. Clipped the letter to the page with a paperclip. Then I dialed Tim. "Expected this?" I asked. "Oh, definitely," he said. "It's a last resort move, trying to intimidate. It won't hold in court, not with your medical letter, your paperwork, your timeline. But they're hoping you'll blink first." "They'll be disappointed," he laughed. "Remind me not to cross you, Aggie." "I don't want to be crossed," I said. "I want to be left in peace. And we'll make sure of that." We spent the next 15 minutes drafting a formal response, rejecting the proposal and reiterating the fraud charges. Tim would file it with the clerk's office, send copies to the sheriff, the DA, and Gavin's attorney. When we hung up, the house was quiet again. Rain still whispered on the windows. I lit the lamp by the couch and sat with the envelope still in my lap. James once said, "People like Gavin mistake stillness for softness. They think if you're not yelling, you're yielding." But I've always found the opposite to be true. Some of the strongest things in this world are quiet. Bedrock. Paper. The will of a woman who has nothing left to prove, but a whole lot left to protect. On Sunday morning, the church bells rang like always. 8 slow chimes, then silence. I wasn't dressed for service. Instead, I stood by the front window in my robe, watching the street like a soldier posted at the edge of a calm battlefield. No movement, no sign of Gavin. I knew he wouldn't come in person anymore. He'd burned that bridge, and I'd soaked it in oil on the way down. Instead, I expected what always follows after people like him run out of options. Pity campaigns. Half-truths with just enough sugar to pass for kindness. It came at noon. A knock. Not Gavin. A woman again, young, stylish, the type who called herself a family mediator, on her LinkedIn page, no doubt. "Mrs. Reynolds?" she said, with a bright, pre-scripted smile. I didn't open the door fully. "Yes. I'm Amanda. I work with families navigating intergenerational disputes. Your grandson thought it might be helpful if I stopped by. Sometimes a neutral voice can bring clarity." "Clarity doesn't come from strangers," I said. "It comes from truth, which he hasn't managed once." "I understand you're upset," she began. I stopped her with a hand. "Upset is when they forget your birthday. This is theft. Fraud. Betrayal. Don't patronize me." Her smile faltered. "There's no need to be combative." "There's no need to be here," I said. She stood in silence for a few seconds, then reached into her bag. "I was asked to give you this." A letter. Another one. I took it. Briefly. "Thank you," I said. "I'll add it to the pile of mistakes." Then I shut the door. I didn't open the envelope right away. I placed it on the side table beside the others. I already knew what was inside. Maybe more apologies, more vague regrets, some attempt to split the difference. But you can't split truth. It either is or it isn't. Instead, I made tea. Sat at the table with my notebook and read over everything I'd documented. Page after page of facts, not feelings. If Gavin wanted to argue in court that I was unstable, he'd be facing a woman with cataloged dates, names, signatures, receipts, and transcripts, and a doctor's letter that closed the case before it began. That afternoon, Eloise came by. Not my granddaughter, Gavin's half-sister from his father's side. She hadn't visited in years, a quiet girl, always in the background. But when I opened the door and saw her, I didn't feel guarded. She looked nervous. "I hope it's okay," she said. I just needed to see you." "Come in," I said. We sat in the living room. I poured her tea. She held the cup with both hands, like she needed the warmth more than the caffeine. "I heard what Gavin did," she said after a long pause. "And I want you to know I don't agree with it. None of it." I studied her carefully. "Why come now?" "Because he's telling people you're unstable, that you've forgotten things, that you don't know what you're doing." "And do you believe that?" "No." Her answer was immediate. "I've always known you were sharper than all of us. I didn't know how to say anything before. And now?" She looked down. "Now I'm ashamed." I didn't rush to comfort her, let her sit with it. "I don't need defenders," I said finally. "But I'm glad you came anyway." She looked up, surprised. "You are?" "Yes, because when the dust settles, what matters isn't who shouts loudest. It's who stands in truth when no one's watching." We sat in silence a while longer. Before she left, she turned at the door. "If you need anything at all, just call me." "I won't need to," I said. "But it's good to know someone still knocks to give, not take." After she left, I opened Gavin's latest letter. It was shorter this time, more desperate. He said the investigation was affecting his job prospects, that people were talking, that families shouldn't treat each other this way. At the bottom, he scribbled in pen, "Let's just make this disappear. No court, no police, just us. Please." I folded the letter and filed it. The plea had come. Now the reckoning would follow. The court summons arrived on a Thursday. Plain envelope, no drama. Just black type on off-white paper, signed by the county clerk, informing me that the fraud case against Gavin Reynolds would move to preliminary hearing in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks. That's all it takes to see if a lie can survive the weight of sunlight. I called Tim as soon as I read it. "We're on," I said. He didn't ask what I meant. "Good. I've already got your file in order. Signed affidavits, the medical clearance, the deed records, even the timeline in your own handwriting." I paused. "You're using my notebook?" He chuckled. "Aggie, the judge is going to think we pulled it out of a documentary. Every page is a nail in his case." I smiled then, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't help it. There's something about being believed that steadies the breath. After we hung up, I made my preparations. I ironed the navy skirt I hadn't worn since James's memorial service, polished the shoes, laid out the pearl pin he gave me on our 25th anniversary, the one I wear only when something important needs saying. Then I called the bank. The voice on the other end was bright, too young. "How can I assist you today?" "I'd like to update the beneficiary on my accounts," I said, "and create a contingency clause for my property and savings." "Of course. Who should we list?" "Eloise Turner," I said. "My great-niece." A pause. "Not Mr. Reynolds?" "No," I said simply. "Not Mr. Reynolds." She processed it without question. The forms would arrive by courier. I'd sign them in front of the notary downtown. Later that evening, I baked. Lemon bread, just like I used to when Gavin was still a boy with sticky hands and oversized socks. Funny how the smell hadn't changed. Only the hands. Only the man. When it cooled, I wrapped the loaf carefully, placed it on a plate, and walked 2 blocks to Nina's house. She opened the door in a housecoat, eyebrows raised. "This is unexpected." "You warned me," I said. "That counts for something." She stepped aside. "Come in, then. I'll make coffee." We sat at her tiny table, the lemon bread between us. Outside, the wind stirred the last of the autumn leaves along the curb. She poured the coffee. We ate in silence at first. Then she said, "You know, I've lived on this street 31 years, watched families rise and unravel. Yours isn't the first I've seen fall apart." I nodded. "But it still stings." "It always does," she said. "But you, Agnes, you didn't fold. Most women your age get scared. They let things slide." "I did let things slide," I said, "for too long." Then he opened that drawer, and something changed. Not just the air in the room. Me. She looked at me, long and kind. "I'm glad. For what it's worth, the whole neighborhood's behind you. People talk, you know." "Let them." After coffee, I walked home slowly, not because I was tired, but because I could. Because this street, these cracked sidewalks, these leaning mailboxes, these porch lights, were mine, and no one was going to write me out of them. Back inside, I found the latest letter from the county in the mailbox. It confirmed the full freeze on the property title. No transactions allowed until the court ruled. No sale, no transfer, no new filings. I placed it in the folder, tucked it behind the forged deed. Let them sit together a while. The lie and the lock. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long, long time. I wrote a letter, by hand. Not to the court, not to Gavin, to myself. Just a few lines. "You are not too old to be stolen from. You are not too proud to defend yourself. You are not too soft to fight back. And you are not alone." I folded the paper, slipped it into the back of my notebook. Some battles don't need banners or armies. Just a chair pulled close to the window, a clear memory, and the will to say, "Not this time." He didn't look at me when I entered the courtroom. Sat 2 rows ahead, next to his attorney, hair slicked back, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit right, like a borrowed costume for a role he hadn't rehearsed. I noticed the fidget in his hand, the way his knee bounced under the table. That wasn't nerves. That was guilt looking for a way out. The courtroom wasn't large. Wood paneling, old carpet. A fan somewhere in the ceiling ticked softly like a metronome. A few others sat in the back. Strangers mostly. A woman in a gray scarf. A man with a clipboard. No family. Not even his mother. I took my seat with Tim beside me. He whispered, "Just answer what's asked. Don't fill the silences. You've already won. You're just making it official now." The judge entered. Gavel. Oath. Case number. Then they called me to the stand. I didn't stumble. Didn't shake. I stood up, straightened my blouse, walked carefully to the witness chair, and met the judge's eyes without apology. "State your name, please." "Agnes Loretta Reynolds." "Your relation to the defendant?" "He's my grandson." "Can you tell the court what prompted you to file this complaint?" I nodded. "He came to my home unannounced on October 3rd, claimed he was checking on me. The next day, I discovered that my original deed, kept in a locked drawer in my study, was missing. I saw Gavin shift, barely. I went on. 2 days later, I received a visit from a real estate agent who claimed my house was listed for showing. I never authorized that. They asked about the documents, the signatures, the timing. I answered every question directly. No emotion, just fact. Then came Gavin's lawyer. He was smooth, young, probably practiced this kind of case with scenarios in class. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said almost kindly, Would you agree that memory can become complicated with age? Not mine, I said. Try again. A few muffled laughs from the back. He cleared his throat. Are you aware that your grandson was attempting to secure the home for family preservation purposes? I am aware that he filed a forged deed using a notary stamp belonging to a deceased woman. That's not preservation. That's fraud. Tim didn't even have to object. The judge gave the young man a look that quieted the room. They tried to trip me again, asked about medications, about doctors, about whether I ever forgot to lock the door or left the stove on. I haven't burned a thing but bridges, I said. Tim smirked beside me. Finally, the judge asked if I had anything to add. I turned slightly in the chair, not toward Gavin, not directly, but just enough that he'd hear me clearly. I am a woman who has lived through 2 wars, buried a husband, and survived grief that could split stone. I have paid every bill on time, kept every document where it belongs, raised children, planted gardens, and held myself upright without help. I don't scare easy, and I don't mistake family for ownership. The room was quiet. Then the judge nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. You may step down. I walked back to my seat, slowly, but not from age, from weight. The weight of every woman who's been told to hush, to forgive, to doubt herself in the face of betrayal dressed in kinship. I sat down, folded my hands in my lap. Across the room, Gavin still didn't look at me. He didn't have to. He'd already seen what he needed to. The hearing ended before noon. The judge didn't need deliberation. Everything was documented: timelines, signatures, notary inconsistencies, letters, testimony. Gavin's attorney tried to stall, asked for an extension, but the judge cut him off. This court recognizes a clear pattern of intentional misrepresentation and fraudulent filing, she said. The deed in question is void. All associated transactions are nullified. Property ownership remains with the plaintiff, Mrs. Agnes Reynolds. I didn't smile. Not in the room, not in front of him. I just breathed in slowly, let the air settle where the worry used to live. The bailiff dismissed us. I gathered my coat, took Tim's arm out of habit more than need. As we passed Gavin, I didn't glance at him, but I saw him. His jaw was tight, his fingers clenched around a folded tissue. For a man who'd tried to look sharp, he was unraveling by the second. Outside, the air had that crisp clarity only November can carry. The leaves were sharp underfoot. The sky, pale, clean, almost indifferent. Tim walked me to the curb. You handled yourself like a senator, he said. You're a force, Aggie. I gave him a tired smile. I'm just a woman who ran out of tolerance, he nodded. What now? I go home. You want me to follow up if he tries anything else? No, I said. Let him try. I'll be waiting. I didn't go straight home, though. I took a walk. Downtown was busier than usual, people bundled in scarves, storefronts already half-decorated for a holiday I hadn't bothered with in years. A little girl tugged at her mother's coat, pointing at something in a toy window. I paused to watch. Not because I wanted the toy, not even because I missed the child I once had, or the grandchild who'd grown into a stranger. I watched because I was free, not from pain, but from permission. Free from needing anyone to believe me in order to act. Free from the idea that silence is strength. Free from the quiet, simmering guilt that maybe, just maybe, I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. I'd seen it all clear. And I'd responded, not reacted. I stopped by the bakery before heading home. bought a single scone, wrapped in wax paper. The girl behind the counter didn't know my name. That felt right. Clean. Like a new chapter with no preamble. At home, the house greeted me with the same stillness as always. But it felt different now, like it recognized me again. I set the scone on a plate, made tea, sat down, and then the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Eloise. She looked nervous, hands shoved in her coat pockets. I heard from someone who was in the courtroom. News travels. I wanted to say, "I'm proud of you." I raised an eyebrow. Most people say that after someone's buried. She half smiled. "I mean it. You stood up. You didn't fold." "I had no one to fold for," I said. "That makes it easier." She shifted. "I know it's not much, but I'd like to come around more. Help out. Not because I want anything, just because I should have before." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Come by Sunday. I'll teach you to make lemon bread, the proper way." Her eyes lit up like I'd offered her treasure. "I'd like that," she said. I nodded. Closed the door gently after her. Then I returned to the kitchen, tore open Gavin's last letter, the one from the week before, still unread. It was more of the same. "You don't know what you're doing. This will follow me forever. You made a mistake." I read it once, then fed it, slowly and without hesitation, into the kitchen trash. Not in rage, but in relief. Some paper belongs in drawers. Some belongs in court. And some belongs in the bin. The Sunday Eloise came, she brought a tin of cinnamon sticks and a small bouquet of late asters from her yard. Not flashy, not store-bought. Real, like her. She looked uncertain when she stepped inside, as if waiting to be told this was a one-time visit, or that forgiveness had a fee. But I wasn't interested in shame or ceremony. I pointed to the apron hanging on the back of the kitchen chair. "You know how to separate eggs?" She smiled. "I can learn." We moved through the recipe slowly, not because it was complicated, but because some things shouldn't be rushed. I showed her how to fold the lemon zest into the batter, how not to overmix, how to test with a toothpick and not with guesswork. She watched closely, careful not to spill. "You always bake alone?" she asked quietly, wiping a bit of flour from her sleeve. "Used to. James was the cook, but I baked. Even when the house was full, this part stayed mine." "You don't mind the help?" I minded the silence more. She nodded, saying nothing. While the bread baked, we sat with tea. She looked around the kitchen. Photos, framed recipes, the clock that chimed late by 2 minutes, but always reminded me of the years I hadn't wasted. "I remember this house feeling bigger," she said softly. "You were smaller. No, I mean, warmer. Like people used to speak softer in it. Like you could hear someone thinking from the next room." I sipped my tea. "That was James. He never raised his voice, even when he was disappointed." She looked at me. "Did you ever think Gavin might have turned out different if James had lived longer?" "I used to," I said. "But Gavin made his choices long after James was gone. That boy got handed more grace than he ever knew what to do with. He didn't trip. He built the slope." Eloise didn't argue. She just nodded, and I loved her a little more for that. When the timer rang, she sprang up like a child. We pulled the loaf out together, steam curling into the kitchen air, sharp and sweet with citrus. She helped me cut 2 slices. We ate in silence again, not out of awkwardness, but out of reverence. There's something holy about the first warm bite of something made right. Before she left, I wrapped a second loaf for her. This one I'd made the day before, just in case. She took it with both hands, eyes soft. I meant what I said. I want to be around. Not just for baking. I don't need caretakers, I said. I know, she replied, but maybe you'd like company, the kind that doesn't want anything. I nodded. Then come by next Sunday. We'll try poppy seed. She smiled wide. I'll bring the seeds. After she left, I stood in the doorway a little while, watching the afternoon quiet settle into the yard. The leaves had begun to mat down, damp and gold. Another storm was coming, probably. The air had that smell, wet bark and something unfinished. Back inside, I walked through the rooms, not checking, just looking, touching things. The edge of the dining table, the back of James's armchair, the photo frame in the hall with Gavin's face, still grinning at 7 years old. I didn't take it down. It wasn't him I was angry at anymore. It was who he refused to become. In the study, I pulled open the drawer again, not to check on the papers. They were there, safe under lock. I opened it because I could, because it no longer made my stomach turn. Sometimes, healing is quiet, not a ceremony, not a declaration. Just the moment you realize something that once felt like a wound no longer does. The letter came on a Wednesday, handwritten, no return address. I knew the handwriting before I unfolded it. Gavin. It was neater than usual, the kind of careful people use when they want something to sound humble but still be heard. The ink was blue, the paper lined, torn from a spiral notebook. Not legal stationery. This wasn't official. This was personal. Grandma, I know you don't owe me anything, but I'm writing because I don't know what else to do. Everything's gone wrong. I lost my job. The lawyer dropped me after the hearing. People talk. I can't get a call back for interviews. And now I'm scared. I never thought I'd end up like this. I thought I was smarter, that I could fix it, make something happen for myself. I didn't realize how far I'd pushed things until it was too late. I've been staying with a friend. It's not going to last much longer. I don't have anywhere to go. I'm not asking for money. I don't know. I thought maybe if you could forgive me, maybe I could forgive myself. If not, I understand. But I hope you'll at least read this. Gavin. I read it twice. Slowly. Then set it down beside my tea, folded my hands, and stared out the window. The wind had shifted that day, cold enough to rattle the branches against the glass like fingers looking for entry. November was deepening. You could feel it in the bones of the house. I didn't cry, but I didn't feel triumphant either. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn not to mistake apology for transformation. Regret is not the same as change. Wanting to be forgiven is not the same as wanting to become worthy of it. And yet, he was still my blood. Still the boy who once curled on my lap with fever and asked if he'd wake up tomorrow. It's a strange thing, how the same hands can carry both harm and history. I kept the letter, but I didn't write back. Instead, I took out the notebook and wrote in it for the last time. Entry 47, November 19th. Gavin wrote, "He is no longer denying. He is asking, but not earning. I do not wish him harm, but I no longer owe him protection." Then I closed it. I placed the notebook in the study drawer, along with every letter, court notice, affidavit, and copy of the forged deed. I locked it all away, not in fear, but in ceremony. Because that part was over. Later that day, Eloise returned. No announcement this time, just a soft knock, and there she was, carrying a paper bag and a look of quiet confidence. "I brought poppy seeds," she said, "and a little honey. Thought we could try something new." "You're early," I said. She shrugged. "Thought maybe we'd talk first, if that's okay." We sat in the kitchen. She poured the tea this time. Her hands were steadier than before. "I got a job offer," she said. "At the library, part-time, but it's something." I smiled. "It suits you. And I wanted to ask—" She hesitated, then continued. "Would it be all right if I used your name for a reference?" "Of course. And if something happened, if you ever needed someone, you know, medically or anything, I put your address on my emergency contact form." That one gave me pause. Not because I was surprised, because it was the first time in weeks someone had offered me something that wasn't tied to guilt or strategy. Just care. "Thank you," I said softly. "That means more than you know." We stood then, mixed the batter, laughed when the flour puffed up too fast, listened to the radio while the oven did its quiet work. For a while, it felt like I'd stepped sideways into a life I didn't even know I'd been waiting for. After she left, I sat on the porch with a blanket across my knees and watched the last light disappear from the sky. And for the first time in months, I felt still. Not because I was waiting, but because I had nothing left to fear. Let him write. Let him regret. That's his weight now. Mine had been carried, spoken, recorded, and laid down. It snowed last night. Not much, just a thin, quiet layer that dusted the porch rail and softened the corners of everything. The kind of snow that doesn't ask anything of you. It just arrives, wraps the world in a hush, and waits to be noticed. I stood at the window this morning with my tea in hand, watching the street disappear under white. The trial was a month behind me now. No more letters, no more threats. Gavin hadn't tried to come back. Not in person. Not through lawyers. His name hadn't crossed my lips since the day I burned his last note in the fireplace. I didn't do it for drama. I did it for air. Some things need to become ash to stop taking up space. I still keep the notebook. Locked in the drawer. I haven't added to it. Haven't needed to. The story is over, at least the part that asked to be written down. Sometimes I think about what he hoped to gain from all this. A house? A slice of comfort? Control? He could have had something better. He could have had a place at the table. Could have learned the lemon bread recipe. Could have sat with me in the early mornings, talking about nothing and everything like people do when they love each other without needing anything in return. But instead, he chose the shortcut. He thought age meant weakness, that politeness meant permission, that because I didn't shout, I wouldn't stop him. He forgot what silence can carry. I remember my mother once told me, when I was a girl too small to understand loss, that there's a difference between peace and surrender. I didn't know what she meant then. I do now. Peace is what I have today. Sitting in this house that still holds my name, with the porch light still working, and the kitchen warm from yesterday's baking. Surrender would have meant silence. Surrender would have been letting someone rewrite the terms of my life while I was still here to live it. I may be 79, but I'm still here. I still open my own doors. Still sign my name with a hand that doesn't shake. Still remember every drawer and what belongs in it. Eloise visits often now, not out of obligation, out of rhythm. She brings recipes she wants to try, talks about her new job at the library, reads me headlines when my eyes get tired. We talk more than we bake, most days. I like that. One afternoon last week, she found the photo album in the closet, the one I hadn't opened in years. We sat for 2 hours flipping through pages. James in his work uniform, the kids in that inflatable pool I never trusted. Even Gavin, small and bright-eyed, clutching a plastic dinosaur and grinning like the world was still soft. Eloise looked up at one point and said, "It's strange, isn't it? How someone can grow up around so much love and still turn cold." I nodded. "Love's not a vaccine," I said. "It helps, but it doesn't immunize people against their own choices." She didn't argue. That's why I trust her. Last night, I lit a single candle for James. I do that every December 1st. He used to tease me that I always got sentimental at the turn of the season. He wasn't wrong. But this year, the flame felt steadier. Not nostalgic, not sad, just strong. A little reminder that I'm not waiting for anything anymore. That no one else gets to write the ending of my life. Not even me. It just arrives, slow and sure, the way snow covers a road you thought you knew. So here I am, still standing, still here, still holding the keys to every door that matters. And if anyone's reading this, any woman who's ever been doubted, dismissed, or gently pushed aside, I'll tell you this: you don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to break to be believed. And you don't have to give away a damn thing just because someone asks nicely. You've earned your peace. Keep it. Guard it. And if they come smiling, asking questions you didn't invite, you offer them tea if you want to, but you never, ever unlock the drawer. Not for anyone. Not again. If this story moved you, share it. If you've been through something like it, speak it. And if you're still holding the silence in your hands, you can set it down now. Thank you for listening. If this meant something to you, leave a comment, send it to someone who needs it, or just take a moment to sit with what it stirred. That's how truth moves. Quietly, but forever.